Right, if you were watching our coverage of Cheltenham earlier in the week, you'll have seen that Cooper Tana brought up the 3,000th British jump winner for trainer Paul Nicholls, and he celebrated. Well, he partied like it was 1999. He was really giving it some, Andrew. Heart on sleeve stuff. I think he enjoyed it.
He did. Brilliant trainer, isn't he? Absolutely brilliant trainer. That's some achievement. You know, he's from a clerk's point of view. He's great to deal with. He's very communicative. You know, he'll ping through a text and ask a question, and is grateful for the response. You know, he's unfailingly a good guy to deal with from my perspective. No, Mark, brilliant trainer and a hell of an achievement. And
the Jockey Club Racecourses have released a series of videos of Paul Nicholls and Nicky Henderson showing each other around.
I saw
their
that. I was just going to say that.
I really
liked that.
It was very enjoyable to watch. Though there was a distinct lack of trade secrets being passed between one and the other.
Yeah. I don't know who. I think I got the impression Paul Nicholls was a bit more kind of mealy-mouthed about it than Nicky Henderson, who was perhaps more willing to say this is exactly what they're doing now and this is why we do that and whatever. I wondered whether they'd ever been there before. I felt like they hadn't, but that seemed quite surprising to me. But you know,
and there was a sort of neat irony in the fact that Cooper Tana, owned by Gretchen Parkin, Mike Gretsch was on the programme the other week, and having their dispersal sale at Doncaster next month, and that mare had moved from Nicky Henderson to Paul Nicholls, which won't have been lost on any of the parties concerned, I wouldn't have thought.
No, maybe he'll get a line in one of his books in future, like Martin Piper.
I like the line about them both wanting to go and see Gordon Elliott's.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, which is
well, that would be the next video, wouldn't it? I mean, that would be great. I'd like to see that.
Gordon Elliott, who's, I mean, what he's built up there from scratch, turning a dairy farm into that establishment, has been nothing short of remarkable.
Incredible.
Paul Nicholls, who will be crowned champion trainer once again at Sandown Park at the end of the week, an amazing season, and 3,000 British jumps winners. Now, big move for Charlie Fellows into one of the most historic yards in Newmarket. Goes into Luca Cumani's Bedford House stables, and well, he's purchased it, and that's going to take him to the next level.
It's got to be a candidate, hasn't it, for one of those stables where you pass it, you find yourself looking at it, don't you, at Bedford House? It's just got a great romance. It's so embedded in flat racing because of Luca Cumani and his utterly brilliant exploits over the years. And it must be a massive, massive thing for a young trainer, mustn't it? Both good and bad. I would have thought, you know, you can't really set your own legacy on the place. He'll need a miracle to compete with. No disrespect to him, he's a very promising trainer, but this is one of the Hall of Fame guys. You know, this is a guy who is the thinking man's thinking man, and it's got good and bad points to it.
Exciting and daunting.
That's it. That's
I would have
perfectly
thought.
Put. Yeah.
And what you need when you move into a stable like that is a horse or two who are going to really take you to the next level. And he might just have one in King Ottokar if you get a rainy derby.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, he was very impressive in the good race at Newbury, wasn't he? He was put into the derby at the April 3-year-old stage we've just had for £9,000. So I've just learned he's named after a Tintin character.
King Ottokar.
Did you know that?
King Ottokar.
I was a Tintin fan, but I can't remember.
Tintin character.
Yeah.
But no, could be the horse that, you know, on the back of the move could be very promising. Really be interesting to see which route he hopefully takes to Epsom.
As stable moves go, I can't think of a more significant one in recent years, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking when you were saying it's quite daunting, isn't it? You think about people going to Manton in the past and it not really working out, and then, you know, the kind of history as a burden on your shoulder a little bit and stuff like that. But I mean, hopefully not, obviously.
Were you thinking of Michael Dickinson?
Well, I was thinking just generally. Yeah, you love Michael Dickinson.
Of course I do. It's just a running.
Never misses a chance. It's a meme
You're
of the show.
mate. You're old
I
mate.
encourage him. I'm there we go.
The All-Weather Championships, and actually Charlie Fellows, he's a thoughtful guy and produces a lot of opinions on social media. All-Weather Championships, he suggested moving from Lingfield to Newcastle because he said it was a fairer track with no bias. I don't have a view on this.
I do.
Enlighten me. Go on.
Couldn't be more strongly opposed to that view.
Going to Newcastle.
I think Lingfield is the perfect track for it because it's a good setting for it. And if you're going to start moaning about the draw advantage and saying you should move races because of the draw advantage, you'll be moving every single flat race there's ever been. Every flat race has got some sort of a bias from time to time. Lingfield, it seems perfectly suited to the Beast. What do you think?
Well, I mean, definitely they're getting the crowds, aren't they? That's
Yeah.
a start.
It's got an
We didn't,
intimacy.
when they started with Good Friday racing, people were saying, "Oh, will it work? Will it catch on? I don't know whether people will come out on Good Friday."
Yeah.
I mean, that's obviously all out of the window now. It's a brilliantly successful.
Talking about track biases, James, an effective draw. Who could forget the brilliant draw for the Investec Derby last year, Andrew, where we
that was
number one Saxon Warrior.
Absolutely, he gets the favourite in the coffin box. I was missing out tonight. That's going to be great again this year, isn't it?
It is happening again this year.
It is.
Yep,
Absolutely.
But
Stall 10 won again.
But that's the point, isn't it? Even the greatest flat racer in the world has an inherent track bias.
Yeah. Well, yes, it does. It's staggering. I think it's stall 11 hasn't won, which is correct. 10 has won umpteen derbies. One hasn't. I don't think 19 has. It was a golden moment once we got the balls up the
brilliant.
roadway.
Jeff Lewis is brilliant there.
But there is, and you can see the reasoning for why stall 1 hasn't won. Yeah, it is a
Yes, it adds that little bit of an extra challenge in those early stages of the race, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
using your horse up the
Using
hill.
your horse to get to
all those infernal sort of public draws we have to sit through, and they're all incredibly dull, and they have to be just blown up. And now we've finally got one that's like massively important. It's like there's that number one. I wonder if you'll get the tips off FIFA to put it in the fridge beforehand, like the height allegedly, and
you say they're
allegedly.
You say they're infernal.
Yeah.
I'm a massive
well, you will
fan.
be, yes, that's right. Yeah,
fan.
Many of your brew bags have been purchased on the back of those. I should imagine. Yeah, sorry, carry on.
Keep them coming. Crouch, not Peter, Tracey. She is an MP, obviously, was the sports minister, and is now an integral part of the new tripartite welfare committee that has been set up by the BHA. It is not specifically a BHA body; it is a tripartite body. Good news for the sport that Tracey Crouch is on this on this committee.
I'd say so. I think people with ethics, which she clearly has, as we know from her voting record, which you can access online, and of the Fob Tees episode, then Tracey Crouch involved in anything I think is great. Yeah. And what's the downside?
Neil?
Well, yeah. I mean, obviously, I tend to be on the other ticket slightly more than. But
of course,
in terms of MPs with a blue rosette, I was very impressed with her during the FOBT stuff. Actually resigning and having some principles. I was quite shocked and surprised, and fair play to her. So can't be a bad thing, can it?
So there we see she's got cross-party respect.
There you go.
Which is a good thing. Irrespective of which happens to be the governing party at any point in the next 2 or 3 years, she is going to be a notable addition to that committee.
She is, as the guys have said. I mean, she comes across as an extremely abled and principled politician. It'll be fascinating to see how this committee goes forward, and what role it undertakes and ultimately fulfills. But I think they've made a very good signing.
Some of the Neanderthals in horse racing will obviously be saying, "Oh, well, she's a vegan or whatever. She's going to end it. She'll have this policy." But horse racing should not depend on the flavour of the month type arguments. Horse racing can robustly defend itself on ethical grounds. We should fear absolutely nothing. It doesn't matter whether someone comes in who might bring a sort of green approach to it. The sport can defend itself readily using logic. It doesn't need to worry about anything like this.
Indeed so. Dundalk, where there has been a significant question posed over the suitability of the surface at Dundalk at the moment. Sarah Lynham wrote a particularly well-constructed essay on this, and also talked a lot about the availability of races for certain horses. This was Wednesday night before racing. They're getting a sticky situation here, Andrew, when artificial surfaces stop working properly.
That's right. I'm not an expert on the Dundalk surface, or indeed on this particular subject. My understanding is the surface has been down since the track opened in
14 years?
I think so.
Something like
12, I think.
12,
yeah, 2007.
But the course are currently, there's a tender process out there at the moment to regenerate, replace, do something.
Is it right? It's supposed to last about 8 or 9 years.
Is my understanding. You should have my very able colleague Barney Clifford.
Yes,
looks after Kempton so ably to answer this. But I know from Barney's experience, the maintenance of an all-weather track involves regular, constant assessment, but both by him, by the BHA course inspectorate, by the manufacturers of the surface. And I don't know quite what's happened out in Ireland, that there seems to have been this sort of disconnect between the venue, the regulator, the manufacturer. Unfortunate though it is, and it sounds as if the team in Ireland
it sort of feels like it's a sudden thing though, whereas if you put something down that's supposed to last 8 or 9 years, 12 years ago, surely, by definition, you should realise as the 8 years comes to an end that you might want to think about doing something about it. Like, how have they only just realised? It's suddenly become a news story.
That's how the world works, unfortunately. People try and get away with stuff until they can't get away with it any longer.
That is, really.
And I think now it's quite clear that professionals and punters are holding them to account, and they need to get it sorted, and get it sorted quite quickly. Ayr took a bit of criticism. We did mention this on the show last week, but the clerk there was forced to defend Ayr's watering policy in light of several withdrawals on Scottish National. And given that one of the senior clerks of the course in the country is sitting on my left, I thought it was appropriate to raise this again, Andrew. When you've got a very fast-drying track like that, and you've talked about it with Epsom, you've got a dilemma on your hands, especially if you're running jump races on it.
Yeah, you have. It's a difficult, challenging situation. I tell you what, I was finding this on my courses last week when Ayr were racing, that although the temperatures weren't particularly high, certainly compared to what we had, with the breeze, things were drying out very quickly the end of last week, almost surprisingly so. And even, I think we also saw it with the first day of the Newmarket, of the Craven meeting, the going stick. It changed a huge amount relative to the time frame in a short space of time. Listen, it's a challenging job. I think the answer in a watering situation, certainly my view, is to get the water on early, albeit little and often. Right. So your timing of your watering is key. So start early enough. For example, for Sandown coming up this weekend, we started watering 3 weeks ago. You sort of had to. You can't. We mustn't let ground get, particularly jumping ground, let's say, to firm and then start trying to
Isn't it slightly the most important thing, just communicating what's going on? Like, because people start shipping horses across the country and punters punting and
Indeed.
whatever. I'm a big fan of yours because you're very good on the old Twitter machine of telling people what's going on.
That's right. I was taught very early in this job by the likes of David Nicholls and Dick Hearn. Whatever you do, just call it how it is. We will work with you. Yeah. Just call that ground at any stage what it is.
I want James Willoughby, who does a lot of research on this subject, to call the breeze-ups, the Craven breeze-ups, as they were. Tell me, what was your...
Yeah, there were some exceptional performances there. The catalogue was smaller and therefore it was better. Sheikh Mohammed propped up trade to a very large extent.
With personal appearances as well.
It's mainly because he's so brilliantly informed by his specialist breeze-up advisors that induces him to spend what he does. He really knows what he's doing at the breeze-up sales, and I think that without him it might have looked very different, and that the middle market of all sales, not necessarily the breeze-up sales, is a big issue for the sport at the moment. What I would describe as real cash buyers, rather than those people that have got their money from the financial sector. Oh, I didn't say that. People who are actually spending money they've genuinely earned. Those are... Sorry, Neil.
No, it's all good. I agree.
Yeah, those people I think are maybe getting priced out the sport a little bit by prize money levels and by the fact that the rich are getting richer quite literally in society. Strings are getting bigger and bigger. It gets harder and harder to compete. And obviously there are great stories about the smaller person, but it does get harder when one trainer's got 13 runners or 14 runners in the national or something, the Irish national or something. So. That's the problem for all sales in this country. You wonder, the economics just don't add up, do they? I watch New York racing every night. Last night I was mentioning earlier to Andrew that there was a New York Stallion Series race at Aqueduct.
Yes.
3-year-olds, colts and fillies, $200,000 in the purse. And during the week there was an American Pharaoh beaten in a maiden at Aqueduct. Maiden special weight, $100,000 to the winner. Why some of the big operations, maybe you can ask this later on, the prize money It just doesn't seem to make any sense whatsoever, you know.
For them to be racing for £2,000.
I mean, our top racers like the Derby are the very, very famous, but have our Group 2s and Group 3s really got that much prestige?
And that is a question that I can put to a man who has Grade 1 winners all over the world.
Correct.
Because Sheikh Fahad will be joining us very shortly. Those were this week's talking points.